what we're looking at tonight is preemptive bidding. Now, preemptive bidding is a style of bidding. Given the name of it, preemptive means that you get in there first. That's what it really means. So far we've learned about the overcalling style, where you have an overcalling hand, like a long suit, and a few points here and there. But the idea behind the overcalling style is to disrupt the opponents. So to be an overcaller, you need the opponents to open the bidding. They open one banana, and then you bid your suit, and then your partner hopefully bids some more of your suit, and you get in their way. That's what we looked at being the overcallers. Now what preemptive bidding is essentially taking that style of bidding, that theory of disrupting the opponent's bidding, and applying it earlier than waiting for them to open the bidding. So before tonight, if you were dealt this hand, you couldn't open this hand, because an opening hand you need 12 plus points. So this isn't an opening hand. Whereas you could overcall one spade. Okay? So what we need to bid on this hand is an opponent to bid before us, right? That is not particularly good because you're essentially relying on them to do something to then facilitate you to be able to disrupt them, which is a bit backwards if you think about it. You're relying on them to bid so that then you can stop them from bidding. That's the wrong way about it, isn't it? So what a preemptive bid is, it's essentially a disruptive bid before they get the chance to open the bidding. And these are much more efficient at disruption because you aren't allowing them any room at all before you bid. So you might open, let's say 3 spades, and they wanted to open 1 club, for example. Now notice, when I spoke about opening the bidding, I've always been referring to opening one of something. 1 club to rebid 1 trump, or 1 heart to rebid 2 diamonds. I was always speaking about opening at the 1 level. That's because I was saving every other level for this lesson. If you open 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, or even 6 or 7, which will never really happen, that is not a normal opening bid. If you have a normal opening hand of 14, 15 points, whatever, you open 1 something. If you have opened, let's say, 2 or 3, that isn't, I have more points. So instinctively, what you would think is, if I open 2 spades, that surely is more points than if I open 1 spade. And if I open 3 spades, surely that's more points than if I open 2 spades. It's the exact opposite of that. The reason being, the instinctive way you want to bid is the stronger your hand, the bigger you bid. That's the instinct. That's the way a normal auction works. The more you want an item, the more you bid for it. However, in bridge, what we try and do is we try to start into a conversation. So the better your hand, the slower you want to go, because you want to have a chat with your partner. I've got this, I've got that, and so on and so forth. So if you open anything above one spade, let's say 3 diamonds, that is a weak hand with a long suit. So a preemptive bid is any opening bid that is not 1 of a suit. Any suit, 2 of a suit, 3 of a suit, 4 of a suit, 9 of a suit, they're all preemptive bids. And what they say is, I have a lot of this suit, I have a long suit. Now obviously a lot is not a very specific number, I will give you specific numbers, but just the kind of generic term for a preemptive bid, I have a long suit but a poor hand. Okay? What that means is you can essentially take on the overcaller's route, kind of trying to be a disruptor, if you will, before the opponents open the bidding. And the longer and longer your suit is, the more and more you really want your suit to be trumps. You'll have all seen a hand with 6 points is not very good, a hand with 6 points and a 9-card suit is very good. So it's not just about the points, it's about the shape of the hand. And the longer and longer your suit is, the more and more you really need your suit to be trumps. Okay? They're known as offensive hands, a hand that is very good if you're declare. If you've got a 9-card suit, that is very good if that suit is trumps, and very poor if that suit isn't trumps. Very offensive. A defensive hand is a hand with goodies everywhere that doesn't mind, so you don't mind defending. So if I adapt this hand ever so slightly, by giving us an extra card, which I'll explain in a minute, if we were the dealer on this hand, before tonight's lesson of preemptive bidding, you would have to pass, because that is not an opening hand, so you can't open 1 spade. And that's all I've given you scope for so far. You're opening 1 level, and the answer would be no. Now what we can do is we can open 2, 3, 4, or 5 with a weak hand with a long suit. Now a long suit is any suit that is 6 cards or longer. That's what we consider long. Yes, a 5-card suit is better than average, but it's not long enough for a preemptive bid. So a 6-card suit or longer is considered long enough to start considering a preemptive bid. Now this all works on the level of the fit. If you remember from Overcaller's week, we bid for the number of trumps we have as a side. So we bid 1 spade, our partner bids 2 spades, that means we should have 8 spades between us, 2 spades being the 8 trick level. So the level of the fit is a pretty good theory. You have 8 trumps, you bid for 8 tricks. So what you do as a preemptive bidder is you make an assumption. Now I agree assumptions are somewhat dangerous, but given that we have 6 cards in spades, there are 7 spades elsewhere. So if we assume that those spades are distributed evenly-ish, that means our partner will have on average 2 1/3 spades. Obviously that's not really true, but you can safely-ish assume that they have 2 cards in your suit. That's a safe assumption. Okay, I can't promise they have 2 spades, but it's reasonable to think that they have 3 spades, they have 2 spades, and they have 2 spades. That's kind of average, if you will. So if you make that assumption, if they have 2 cards in your suit, and we have 6 cards in our suit, we have 8 cards together, if we trust that assumption. And if we have 8 cards together, we want to be at the 8 trick level based on the level of the fit. Notice there are 2 different ways you bid. You bid on aggression and disruption, level of the fit, or you bid because you've got a good hand based on your points. There's 2 different ways you bid, trying to mess up their bidding or trying to build something yourself. Destructive, constructive. So this preemptive bidding is destructive. You're trying to destroy the space so that no one else can talk because you have a long suit. So if we make the assumption that there are 2 spades here, we have 6 in our hand makes 8. So therefore we want to bid for the 8 trick level. So what do you think I want to open with that hand?
2 spades.
2 spades. Now, because we have agreed, we being north and south, whoever that is, me and my partner, we have agreed that if I open the bidding higher than the 1 level, that is a preemptive bid. So if I open 2 spades, that is not I have 6 spades and a good hand. It is I have 6 spades and not an opening hand. I do not have 12 points, because if I did, I would have opened 1, not 2. Again, you've got to get out of the instinct of 2 is better than 1. 1 is better than 2. Now I understand that sounds silly, but it's because the better you are, the slower you want to go. So by opening 2 spades, what we're trying to do, and the reason I've given spades is because they're the most destructive suits, my favourite suit. By opening 2 spades, we have not allowed east or west to bid anything at the 1 or 2 level, except 2 no trumps, I suppose. So they have to come in with, let's say they want to bid diamonds, they have to bid 3 diamonds as the minimum number of diamonds if they want to bid. And that is without any knowing nothing about their partner's hand at all. So it makes it very difficult, because what you have done essentially is removed the first 2 levels of bidding, which are probably the most important levels of bidding, because they're the ones where they have a chat. 1 diamond, 1 heart, 2 diamonds, 3 no trumps kind of thing. They can't do that now, because you've got there first. Hence the term preemptive. You preempt them out of the bidding.
There's no bottom limit to the points then? You don't have to have 6 before you do
Yes
it.
and no. Yes, there is a bottom limit, but I don't mind hyper-aggression. Given that we are in an aggressive... this is an aggressive bid,
Right.
I don't want you to be chicken, because that's the nature of it.
6 no honours.
Okay, I mean... if you made it that, fair enough. I think that's probably a touch too aggressive to open 2 spades, yeah. Strictly speaking, if you want kind of lines, I know we like lines, black and white lines, which isn't really true, is it? But if we really like lines, 5 points is about the bottom of where you really want to go. You would like points in your suits, because having quality of suit means your trumps aren't naff. So if you have decent-ish trumps, if you had 4 points, but you had King, Jack, 10, 9 of trumps as your 4 points, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Try not to glue to, oh, I need 5, I've only got 4, so I'm not going to bother. The idea behind these bids is to disrupt your opponents. So if
you've
you're
got to have a minimum of 5
points or cards.
cards.
Cards you need at least 6.
At least 6.
Yes, if you've got only a 5 card suit, imagine that were the case. I'll put the Queen Jack back because it's making me feel uneasy. If you only had 5 cards and that was our shape, the level of the fit, if we assume our partner has 2 cards in spades, the level of the fit is 1, isn't it? 5 plus 2 is 7, so we want to bid for 7 tricks. But we can't open 1 spade, because that's a normal opening bid. So to make a preemptive bid, you have to have a minimum
of 6.
Of a 6-card suit. Okay? You would like cards, high cards in your suit. The more and more points are stuck in your suit, the better the preemptive bid. The longer your suit, the better the preemptive bid. It's all about, it's very, very similar / identical to being an overcaller, having good suits and long suits and not necessarily a good hand. Okay? Now, if I, through the power of magic on the board, give us an extra spade, now what does the level of the fit say? We have now 7 spades. We have 9 together. I appreciate that's an assumption. We have 9 together. So therefore we want to open what? 3 spades. Our hand, in theory, if you follow the points, which is not how we should be looking at our hand has not improved, has it? We've gone from 7 points to 7 points. But critically, we've gained an extra trump. And in theory, if our suit is trumps, that's an extra trick. So therefore, bidding 3 spades on this hand is better than bidding 2 because we have more spades. And if you go really crazy, I now think we should open what? 4 spades. Are we going to make 4 spades? Probably not. But that's not the idea. The idea is, by opening 4 spades, what chance do the opponents have of bidding their making 4 hearts? 0. They can't bid. They just can't bid. Yeah, okay, you bid 4 spades, you go 3 off, you lose 150. And then the other table, they're playing in 4 hearts, making 420.
But if you were vulnerable, would you do it?
Yeah.
Because they could double you. And
They could. It could go wrong. I can't guarantee success. They could double you. Your partner might put down avoided spades, and you go 4 off. But more often than not, it works out in the long run. But yeah, vulnerability is a good point. Vulnerability is something to consider. These hyper-aggressive bids make an assumption that you might go off. In fact, it's sort of the idea to go off. I appreciate that's silly. But the idea to go off in the sense that if you go off in your contract, it's because they could make something, because they have more points than you, is the theory. So if you bid 4 spades and you go, let's say 4 off, which would be really, really bad. That would be really unlucky. That means you've lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's really hard to go 4 off without many spades. Anyway, let's say you go 4 off somehow. And they double you, that would be worse than them making their game. But you are relying on some help from your partner. Some help being like, even if they just had the king of spades only, that is their one and only card. We're going to go like 2 off in 4 spades, which is not a bad result, given that they can then make some kind of slam. Okay, we're not about slam bidding yet, but what I'm trying to say is the points stack up. If you go off a lot, it's because they could have made a lot. And if you go off a little, it's they could have made like a par score. And if you make it, great. It sort of can't fail. Because if you make your contract, that's good. If you go off a little bit, they would have made something. If you go off a lot, they'd have made something big. So it sort of can't fail, given that we've made our suit trumps. And the reason we've made our suit trumps, or the way we have done that, is by being hyper-aggressive and bidding straight to the level of the fit, on an assumption that the partner has a couple of trumps for us. So it's all about kind of, it worked. Let's say we were dealt this hand 1,000 times. It's the correct thing to be in 4 spades, let's say 950 times. So that's the idea. You're trying to win in the long run. Yes, you could create a hand where opening 4 spades and you're vulnerable and you go off and they can't make anything. You could create that hand. But typically speaking, you've got an 8-card suit. You want to be in it. There's a joke, which is not really very funny, and that is, what do you call an 8-card suit? And the answer is trumps. So you need that suit of trumps, because if you play in hearts, diamonds or clubs, your hand is worth 1 trick. If you play in spades, your hand is worth somewhere in the 7-8 trick region, depending on what your partner has to help you. Okay, so it really makes your hand a lot better. So these preemptive style hands, you really want your suit as trumps, and the more and more trumps you have, assuming your suit is going to be trumps, the more and more aggressive you can be. Okay. Now, as I say, quality of suit is everything. If your suit quality is really, really good, you could even stretch by one if you really want to. If you made the suit that, and maybe we got there, or let's say that. That is known as a classic preempt when you have King, Queen, Jack, 10. The reason for having this as a classic preempt is because the opponents are very likely to have the ace in your suit. Which means that if you are defending, let's say they're playing in 4 hearts, your hand is most likely going to take 0 tricks. Because they play their ace and now they've run out of spades. Because you have so many of them. So this is a hand that really, really wants spades as trumps, because your hand is, you might as well put your hand away if spades aren't trumps. You follow me? Mm-hmm. So you could, if you have a really, really good suit quality, you could even stretch. So you might even open 4 spades when you only have 7 because you're feeling aggressive. I would only ever do these hyper-aggressive moves if you're not vulnerable. If you're vulnerable, you should be normal. Okay? But the theory here is not about the strength of hand. You could argue the weaker your hand, the more you want to do it. Because if you have 0 points, not that you would do it 0, if you have 0 points, the opponent's rate to have a lot of points between them. So you want to try to disturb their bidding as much as you can. Okay?
So if you went on that one, if you went 3 spades on that, the odds are that everybody else is going to pass.
It's quite likely, but not guaranteed.
No.
But it's quite likely.
But your partner would.
Not necessarily, I'll get to that in a
Oh.
minute. So, by opening such a high thing, the idea really is that you give them both impossible positions. Let's say they both have 13 points each, or there or thereabouts. You open 3 spades. They can't bid, because they don't want to bid 4 on their own. They can't bid, because they don't want to bid 4 on their own. Between them, they've got enough to bid game, but they don't know. That's where you win. You play in 3 spades, they look at each other and go, oh, the other table played in 4 hearts. Why didn't we bid 4 hearts? They go, well, I can't bid 4 hearts. Well, I can't bid 4 hearts. That's because you've stopped them from doing it. Whereas if you pass and just sort of meekly let them do it, 1 heart, 3 hearts, 4 hearts. Nice and easy. Okay? So when you have these style hands, as I say, the longer suit, the more preemptive it is. The better the suit quality, the more preemptive it is. If you move your points away from your suit, it becomes more defensive. So this, whilst I would open 3 spades on that hand, it's not as good as the previous one. It's all about purity of suit and having a really really weirdly distributed hand, having a single track hand. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now,
but can I just ask?
Yes.
What you seem to me to be assuming is that's a very unevenly distributed hand.
Yes.
And you're kind of assuming that the other 3 hands are all equally distributed.
There or thereabouts. Only with respect to this suit.
Right.
They might have 7 hearts and bid 4 hearts over your 3 spades, for example. That does happen. When you've got a weirdly shaped hand, often other people do. Yeah. But typically, if you have 7 spades in your hand, everyone will have 2-ish. It's unusual for it to be 4-2-0, for example. It's more likely to be 3-2-1 or 2-2-2. That's the most frequent layout. But I agree with you, I am making an assumption. I am assuming that our partner has not got 0 spades, because that would be bad, wouldn't it? If that's the case, the preempt didn't work. And if you are playing bridge in 3 weeks' time and that does happen, you feel free to come and shout at me. But it is kind of less likely than the normal scenario if partner has a couple of trumps. The other suits may well be weirdly distributed. Obviously, someone's got a fistful of diamonds here, so they might bid 4 diamonds over your 3 spades. One thing I want to point out, I'm going to kind of change it ever so slightly, but just have a look at another one. You can do preempts in any of the 4 suits. Naturally, if you have a preemptive hand that is in spades, that works better. The reason that works better is because no one can bid over your suit at the same level. So if you open 3 spades, the minimum they can bid is 4 bananas, unless they're bidding 3 no trumps, which will be unusual on their own. Whereas if you open a preemptive bid in diamonds, 2 diamonds would be the correct opening bid on this hand, they could bid 2 hearts or 2 spades, couldn't they? So that's not as destructive. It's not as good, basically. That's because spades are boss. But it's still worth doing, because they can't open 1 anything by you opening 2 diamonds. And if they do have clubs, they have to bid 3 clubs rather than 2 clubs, or 1 club. So it's worth doing, it's just not as attractive.
So are you saying then you do that for all 4 suits? You're not using your club bid to say something else when it's due?
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. So, by opening a preemptive bid, we're making an assumption that our partner has 2 cards. Okay, that's all we're really doing. So if they have 2, we have 8, that means we open 2, or if they have 2, we have 9, so we open 3. It follows as linearly as you go on. So if you have a 9-card suit, which is really rare, by the way, perhaps not tonight, but normally really rare. A 9-card suit, I've probably had that maybe 5 or 6 times in my life, and I've played a lot of bridge, so 9-card suits aren't very common. But if you do have a 9-card suit, 9 plus 2 is 11, in theory you could go to the 5 level. Obviously watch out for vulnerability, blah blah blah. But they're not particularly common. More 6s and 7s are fairly common, 9s not really. I don't think I've ever seen a 10-card suit. Maybe. Anyway. Now, if you were to open this hand 2 diamonds, which is the correct opening bid, I'll go back to this in a minute, but they make a double. I'll come back to that in a minute, just explain what it is exactly. Now, South is... They kind of know what you're assuming. They know that you're assuming that they have 2 diamonds, but they might have more diamonds to support you. So let's have a look. Let's say their hand is something rubbish like that. So from South's perspective, you've opened 2 diamonds, which promises 6 cards in diamonds and a weak hand. So there's 2 ways to think about this. Either you work it out again, you work the level of the fit out again, so they've got 6, I've got 4, that's 10. Or you go, you've assumed I have 2, I actually have 4, which is 2 more, so I can bid 2 more. There's 2 ways to think about it. Either think about what they've assumed, or add it all up again. Either way works. So here, because we have 4 cards in diamonds, our partner's promised us 6, we have 10 together, which means we want to bid for 10 tricks. Notice, I'm not concerned about the points. Just like being an overcaller, I don't care if your hand's weak. In fact, I'm incentivized to bid when your hand's weak because it means their hands are strong. We have a maximum of kind of 12, 13, something like how many we've got, 7, opposite a maximum of about 10. We've got a maximum of 17 points between the two of us, there or thereabouts. So we're not going to make anything, particularly, but they are going to make something, so we need to bid. So what do I want to bid on those south cards? 4 diamonds. If you know the level of the fit, which we do, you bid to it straight away. We could bid 3 diamonds with an intention of bidding 4 diamonds later, but that lets them in, that opens the door for them. So bid 4 diamonds now. And what you'll find is West squirms. Because West wanted to bid, let's say, 3 hearts or 3 spades. And now they're going, oh, should I bid 4? Or should I pass? Neither of which is attractive, potentially. They might think 4's too high, but they don't want to defend diamonds. So they can't win, they have to guess. If you force your opponents to guess, they will guess wrong some of the time. And that's really what we're trying to do. They pass, their partner goes, well, you must have nothing, I'll defend diamonds. And we lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tricks. So we make 7 tricks, which is 3 off in 4 diamonds, but they could have easily made 4 spades. Easily. So instead of losing 420 or 620, we've lost 150 or 300. In both vulnerabilities, it's still the correct thing to do. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's all about losing to win, which is silly, isn't it? But it's about damage limitation. When you have a weak hand in a long suit and your partner has support for you with a weak hand as well, you need to stop them from playing in whatever they're about to score points in. Okay?
If you were West-East, would you be aggressive back?
You could be, but you are... It's kind of the early bird gets the worm in the sense that they're there first, aren't they? So by you bidding, let's say, 2 hearts when you're stretched, your partner might think you're a full shilling. Really, you want to... Not in that way. You want to try and bid a contract you can make, is the problem. So if you bid 4 hearts going, well, I'm not letting you play 4 diamonds, and then you go off instead, that's bad, isn't it? Because at least you were going to gain some points by defending, whereas now you've turned a positive into a negative. So it's not easy to combat. It really isn't. And I'm not just saying that to kind of entice you into look how good this is. Genuinely speaking, it's very difficult to get around this style of bidding. Right, now I just want to go into this double, because last time out we had a look at the double. The reason I teach you double first is because that is the best kit to deal with these aggressive preemptive bids. It's the best way to get back into the bidding. So defending against a preemptive bid, to be honest, defending a preemptive bid is an entire lesson in itself. And I will do a lesson on defending preemptive bids. But just as a little kind of side note, I wanted to point out that a double is a very useful bid as a way of competing against these aggressive bids. So let's say North opens 3 spades. So what do we know about North's hand? What have they got?
7 spades.
7 spades, and they've got up to about 10-ish points. Strictly speaking, if you're interested, the textbook, if there was one, would be kind of 5 to 10-ish. Again, emphasis on the ish. If you've got 4 and you like it, fine. If you've got 11 and you think, I'm not, whatever. It's more about suit quality than anything. The key there is they have definitely 7 spades, right? So let's give us a hand for East. I'll give us the teacher's double first, because that's nice and pretty, but I'll change it slightly so it's not so perfect in a minute. Let's say that. So what you will often find when they open a preemptive bid, it's quite likely when they open 3 spades, because they have long spades and a weak hand, it's a fair assumption that you will have short spades and a decent hand. The opposite. Because they haven't got many points, but they have got lots of spades. So for you to have few spades but a few points, it's quite a likely thing. So takeout doubles naturally lend themselves to defending against these preemptive bids. So a takeout double says SOS, if you remember, which is shortage in their suit. Well, that's quite likely, given that they've got millions and millions of them. An opening hand, again, that's quite likely, because their hand is weak. And support for the other 3. So a takeout double of 1 spade, and a takeout double of 2 spades, and a takeout double of 3 spades are all essentially the same thing. So be slightly cautious when you're going higher and higher that you're forcing your partner to bid at a higher and higher level. So over 3 spades, we are forcing our partner to bid 4 some things as a minimum, which is quite high. So be slightly aware that doubling at the 3 level is a fairly bold bid in the sense that you're forcing your partner. So looking at this East hand, double looks like a reasonable bet because they look like they've got a spade fit. We want to play in our suit, not spades, don't we? The problem you've got and the doubt you have is how many points does our partner have? You can't answer because you don't know. You could cheat, I suppose, and ask them. But we don't know anything about the hand. All we know is we really don't want spades as trumps. So we've got two options, both of which are arguably the wrong thing to do. You could pass because you're scared of the 4 level, which I understand. Or you could double, making our partner bid, potentially at a 4 level, which is too high. They might have not very many points, might they? So this 3 spade bid basically has done us in. We can't actually strictly win, because if you double, it could be the wrong thing to do. If you pass, it could be the wrong thing to do. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we are put in a position where we have to guess. So if a takeout double does apply, typically it's the best thing to do. If a takeout double is applicable. So in this instance, we have got all of these met. We're short in their suit, we have an open hand, and we have support for the other 3. This is in fact a perfect shape because we genuinely, actively want to support our partner in whatever they choose. Obviously hearts being better than the minors, but whatever. So here, a takeout double would make sense over their 3 spade bid. Yes, I share some concern with you that your partner bids 4 clubs and it might be too high because they've only got 2 points, which could happen, couldn't it? But you've got to be fairly, fairly willing to sacrifice yourself to double to try and get out of their preempted contract. Because what they want to do is play in 3 spades. That's what they want to do. So by them opening 3 spades, if you were to pass with this hand, you're essentially letting them do what they want to do. And they're going to make 3 spades or they're not, and they don't really care because you've missed your 4 heart contract, for example. Okay? So, go on.
Is it also true that if you did double and your partner did have 1 club and whatever, no points, you could not bid if you were West because you would have doubled them in the other sense, wouldn't you? You'd have said, I think you will go off.
Yes, but you only ever pass a takeout double. Your partner's asking you to bid. So if East makes a double asking West to bid, West would only ever not bid if they think the current contract is going to go off.
Yes.
So West wouldn't pass with 1 point, but they would pass with a lot of spades.
Yeah.
They had
Yeah.
all the rest of the spades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if the spades were 7, 1, 1, 4 or something, and they think, actually, I don't want to bid because they're in trouble in 3 spades, fair enough, you could do that, but that's quite rare. Typically, you'll find they have like 2 spades and 5 clubs, for example. Okay? One thing that kind of protects you in this instance is if they have a 7-card suit, it is incredibly likely that they have a fit. Which means if they have a fit, so do you. So therefore, competing against these preemptive bids hardly ever lands you in a horrible contract because you almost always have a fit yourself. So doubling, if applicable, tends to be the right thing to do.
Just talk it through doubling again.
Okay. So we're short in their suit.
Yeah.
We've got a good hand, and we want our partner to bid something.
Yeah.
The problem we've got over 3 spades is we don't know whether it's a bid clubs, diamonds, or hearts.
Yeah.
It depends on what's over here.
Yeah.
So what the double does is it asks our partner to choose for us.
Yeah.
It says, I don't like this.
So you have to hold the card up, don't you?
You just put double down.
You just put a double down.
Yeah.
And that's telling your partner
Bid
they've got to bid.
Mhm.
And they've got to bid above the 3 spades then, haven't they?
Yes, which is scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's the power of this bid here. It's forcing you right up here before you've even had a chance to talk.
Right.
But this is the best defence. And I appreciate you're going, really? Is that it? Is that the best thing we can do? Yeah, that's the best we can do. These bids are so good, this is the best thing we can do to compete against them. They work sometimes, they don't work sometimes.
Does it make a difference if your support is 5-4-3 rather than 4-4-4?
It's better to be 4-4-4, but if it was 5-4-3, the double still applies, so therefore I would still make a double.
Right.
Obviously you would prefer partners to bid diamonds or hearts in this instance, but you don't mind them bidding clubs. So no, it doesn't make a difference, but the perfect shape is 4-4-1. So the
If
perfect
South does bid, is West still forced to bid?
No, not after a takeout. But
Okay.
once the double's happened, let's say South bids 4 spades because they've got 3 spades and they've got 7, which is 10, so they're bidding for 10 tricks, which could happen. Now the double has been removed because the double was on 3 spades, which is now not the final contract. At this point, West probably breathes a sigh of relief. Okay. But South's probably doing that because West was about to bid a contract that would have made for these guys, so they're trying to kill the bidding. Okay? So do you see, it's really important that you see the 2 different styles of bidding emerging here. There's the constructive side, 1 club, 1 heart, 1 no trump. Let's have a nice little chat. There's the destructive side, 4 spades, enjoy. See the difference?
Is there ever a situation, Don, when West might also have, say, a void in spades or one spade, a fairly balanced hand themselves, and maybe a few points, and they would double again.
Yes, they could do. At this level, if West were to double, at this level, it would be penalties.
So
it would be penalties.
So
But it could be
East
taken out
wouldn't-
as well. If I decrease these slightly, don't forget, a double is penalties when it's game or above.
Yeah.
So if it got to
East
four.
wouldn't know, would they?
Correct. So East would just pass that double going, well, if you think it's going off, I'm happy to trust you. But if it was 2 spades, 3 spades, 2 spades double, take out, same. 3 spades, I've got 3 spades with your 6 spades to make 9, level of the fifth. By the way, it's really important that you do this because it continues the aggression. It makes it much harder for them. West then doubles, which says, actually, I want you to bid because I don't know what to bid myself. So yes, you could have 2 takeout doubles. You could have both of them telling each other to bid, neither of them wanting to do it. Eventually you get to a point where you have to bid them. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is what do you do as the preemptor once you've said what you've got? Once we've opened 2 spades, let's say this was the bidding, just out of interest, 2 spades, double, 3 spades, double, let's say, which is a pretty advanced sequence, but whatever. Now, North might, some Norths, especially the aggressive ones in the room, might be tempted to bid 4 spades to continue the aggression of the continuation of the aggression, if you see what I mean. So, what you mustn't do as a preemptive bidder, I should say, is bid your hand twice. Once you've opened the bidding, you have said basically exactly what you have. You've said, I have this many cards in my suit and I have this many points, to a certain degree of accuracy. So a preemptive bidder never bids again. You opened your bid, that is it. Your hand is done. If you wanted to open 3 spades and you only opened 2, tough. Okay? So you open, it's about going in there quickly and then out again. In and out. You're in with your big bid and then you leave them to stew in their mess. That's the idea. So by opening 2 spades, our partner raises to 3 spades, you should not be tempted to bid 4 spades under any circumstances. You have 6 cards in spades. If 4 spades was the right bid, your partner would have done it. You know nothing about their hand other than they have 3 cards in spades. They know everything about yours. So you've got to respect their decision. Okay? Very important part of preempting because you can get bloodthirsty with this aggressive bidding. And you go, I'm just not letting you play at all evening. And then you end up too high. And then they double you, and then the wheels start coming off, okay? So you respect the level of the fit, you open your preemptive bid, you're very aggressive. Once you've done your bit, that's it. Finished, okay? So 2 spades, 3 spades, North-South should not be bidding any more at all, and leave East-West to find their contract or not, depending on whether they bid the correct thing or not. Okay?
If these doubles on that, West doesn't have a minimum point level. It doesn't require a minimum point level to respond. It's just where they're.
It's just been forced to bid. So let's say South passes. If we go back to East doubling 2 spades, West might have, for example, this isn't necessarily true, but they might have some weird. What you find is when someone has a long suit, so does someone else. So this isn't exactly against the odds. They might have something like that, 6 clubs and a weak hand. So over the double, they've got to bid. So you just bid your suit at the cheapest level if your hand's rubbish. Don't forget, this double is showing an opening hand, so if you also have an opening hand over here, you want to be in game somewhere. But you've essentially got to punt it, because you haven't got the communication. We've been spoiled so far, in the sense that you can just have a nice little chat. And suddenly I introduced overcallers, and then they started disrupting you. Now the disruption has just gone up another level. Now you're going to be having to punt contracts here, there and everywhere, because you just haven't got the room to talk to one another. Okay? And that's because of these preemptive bids are so disruptive.
So if I have 14 points, I could bid 5 clubs.
You could, yeah. If we made this hand much better, let's say with the, I don't know, Ace of Hearts, Doubleton, King, Doubleton, Diamond, something like that. That's what, 13, is it?
Yeah.
You could have a go at 5 clubs. Is it guaranteed? No. But, what else are you going to do? 3 clubs is too chicken, isn't it? So what you tend to find after these doubles is you just have to shrug and bid a contract you think is reasonable. Hence why these bids are so good, because sometimes by shrugging and bidding a reasonable contract, what you think is reasonable, it will go wrong some of the time.
So how did that arrive at 5 clubs?
We've got 13 points. Our partner has doubles showing as an opening hand, so we want to be in game.
Right.
We know they've got clubs with us because they promised us support.
Thank you.
So we've just had a go at 5 clubs. Is 5 clubs going to make? Maybe. Depends on how the clubs behave. Depends on if the club's breaking nicely or not.
So
But
if East couldn't double because they don't have SOS,
Mhm.
what would they do as an overbid?
be very, very frustrated by the preemptive bid. So if that were the hand, you have an option. I will get into defending preempts as a separate lesson, as I say, but you have an option to bid your suit if you want to. The problem with bidding your suit is you're bidding it at a very high level, naturally. So with this hand, we've got, what's that, 13, 14 points, something like that. We don't have double as an applicable bid because we can't tolerate the clubs. So if we double and partner bids 5 clubs, we feel sick, so we can't do that. So instead, we have an option. We either pass or we bid our suit. So do you want to bid 3 diamonds on your own? Probably not. Do we want to pass? Not really. So you haven't really got an option. You'd like to both pass and bid 3 diamonds and then wait for your partner's approval as to which one's the right one, which you can't do. That's because this bid has made you have to guess. If double doesn't apply, you either bid your suit or you don't bid, really. Which I appreciate is an imperfect answer. That's because it's an imperfect problem. The problem in itself. Okay? So, in the hands tonight, there are long suits everywhere. You will find, I hope they will demonstrate the power of being the preemptors and being preempted. Very, very annoying being these people and really good fun being these people. And don't worry if you don't make your contract, because that's sort of the idea, to stop them from making their contract. What might be a good exercise is looking, we were in 4 spades 2 off, what would you guys have made? Oh, you would have made 4 hearts, so it was a good idea. And obviously the travellers might show you people in different contracts and you might be glad to have gone off rather than let them play in their contract. Okay?